Meg, thanks for being here today. Really appreciate it. Just to clarify, you're running for the at-large seat on the Laramie County School District
I
1
am.
Board of Trustees. Okay. So let's start with what's your main motivation for seeking a seat on the Board of Trustees?
My main motivation is I really believe in education. So that means access to it. That means reaching as many people as possible. That means I don't want any restrictions on it. And the reason I chose to run was because I really felt like at some of the recent meetings, there had been some folks that really seemed to want to restrict education and restrict access to it. And that concerned me because one of the things I really was pleased about when I moved to Wyoming back in 2014 was that the education here, the system here, seemed to really want to give as much knowledge and accessibility to everyone. And that was something that was really impressive, especially for my own young kids who are in the system.
Right, so you have kids in this?
I do. I have, actually, they're both now in high schools, but when we first got here, they were little. So it was really refreshing to see how the educational system here differed from where we had come from, which was Nevada.
Okay. Very good. Meg, if you're elected, how would you make sure you're considering the needs of all constituents?
One of the things that being on the school board means is you have to be a leader. And then unfortunately that means you have to make hard decisions, but it also means you have to listen to all the needs of the different people that are in the community. Even though, and particularly those that didn't vote for you, because you have to show that you were the best choice to be voted into the school board. So my goal is to hear the concerns of both those that agree with my perspective and those that don't, and see if we can find a balance within the middle ground so that we can address their issues as well as our own.
Okay, very good. And what do you think the relationship between the board and parents should look like?
It should be a working partnership. A lot of us that get elected are parents with kids in the system. And so it's really important that we all recognize we are on the same side and to not let our emotions get involved, because when people get emotional, they're too attached to whatever they're feeling and not looking for the solutions that could actually compromise and help everyone. And it should be a partnership. There shouldn't be fights at the school board meetings. It's time for people to kind of step back, take a deep breath and say, what are we doing to help the kids and ensure their education, not what are we doing that affects me directly. It's got to be a partnership, otherwise it will fall apart.
Okay. And then related to that, what should the rules of engagement be at school board meetings?
Take a deep breath. Listen to the people that you don't agree with. Listen to the ones you do. Find a middle ground. Come at it at a perspective of we're trying to find a solution. The specifics, wait your turn, listen to others. Definitely address I think it was the head of the school board, address them and then answer the questions.
Now, there have been some rules that have been put in place, partly because of the pandemic, partly because of members that are on the board. Registration is required in advance to speak, and then the 3-minute time limit. Do you agree with those requirements, or would you change any of them?
I do agree with the registration and the 3-minute time limit. What I do suggest is they make their website better. It wasn't very clear that that was part of the rules. Some people knew, some people didn't. And I know people showed up at the meetings and they were really frustrated they couldn't speak. So I think it needs to be very clear. I'm glad that it's now coming into the news so that everyone knows about it, but I think it needs to be more clear on the website.
And there are 2 different time periods during the meeting for public comment, one at the beginning and one at the end. Do you like that structure, or is there anything you would change about that?
What I like about the one at the beginning is it usually pertains to whatever they're discussing. And that's really important because I think people get worked up about something that's not on the agenda and then they try to divert the conversation. I think it's important that you know what you want to talk about. And if it's not on the agenda, definitely save it to the end. So I think splitting up the comment section is important so that people that can discuss whatever they're discussing that day can be heard, and then those that have other issues to bring up is good.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Do you think K-12 schools in Wyoming are adequately funded? And if not, how would you recommend the legislature address the issue?
I would love to say that they're adequately funded. They have a really beautiful budget. However, watching over the last few years, the legislature has just decided that education is the one thing that no one cares enough about, so they can defund it. And I really disagree. What can the legislature do? Well, I think they need to tax the big box stores. I'm not talking about local businesses because I know they pay high property taxes, and I know the residents have already paid high property taxes. We care about education, so we're willing to do that. I think we need to start charging taxes on the larger outside, the national chains that like to come in, because if they want great workers that are educated and want to work for them, they need to have them educated. And I know I just repeated myself, but the idea is you pay into the system to get great education. Residents are already doing so, local businesses are already doing so. It's time for the big businesses to do so too. And there was a bill a couple of years ago, I think, it was a couple of years ago or last year, that came up that said, we are going to tax the big box stores. And the legislature decided that that wasn't worth their time. I disagree.
Very good. If you're elected, Meg, as a board member, what would be your budget priorities for the LCSD1 budget?
I have two priorities. Teacher compensation, because they are professionals. They do a job we can't do, and they do it very well. And they deserve to be paid for that. The other thing is public safety. We need to have crossing guards, especially around all the schools, because between impatient parents and teenagers learning to drive, we really need people to slow down and take stock of who's around them.
For sure. Public safety, let me follow up with that really quickly. Any other concerns other than the crossing guards? Are you concerned about the safety of the schools, the building themselves, or do you think those are taken care of pretty well? The buildings themselves, public safety, that means in that regard, make sure we update our facilities, make sure that they're not full of asbestos and lead paint. We need to make sure that they're up to date and safe to be in. I know that my kids have complained that some schools are freezing in the winter and overheated in the summer. The problem with upkeep is it takes upkeep, and that takes money. And so there should be definitely budgets set aside specifically to make sure and maintain and upkeep our school buildings. Okay. Related to your first priority, teacher compensation, how do you feel about increasing teacher compensation? If you agree that salaries need to be raised, where would you find the money to do that?
Again, it would have to come from those taxes. The whole system is based on taxes, of course, and but it is worth it. It is worth it, every penny, to go into paying professionals to do this. As we learned over the pandemic, parents are not great teachers. We're just not. That's not our main focus. And having to help my kids online, it was like, oh, right, I need to remember how to do this. Those teachers are worth every penny we pay them. And they're professionals, like a doctor, like a plumber, like a carpenter. You can't pay them bare bones and say, you're going to do fine. You need to pay them what they're worth.
And how do you think they need an increase at this point?
I do. I do.
How much freedom should teachers have with regard to teaching the district's curriculum?
Well, I think they should have all the freedom they need to get across the stuff that is state mandated. We do have a curriculum that is required by the state to get accredited, so we have to follow within those guidelines. But how you draw within those guidelines is up to them. They are professionals and they know how to get the information across to the broadest number of students. If we limit them, then they can't reach as many students and the kids just don't do well. So I think they should have as much freedom. They have to teach this. They should have as much freedom within those lines to teach it however they can get it across.
How do you feel about the teaching of racial discrimination as part of U.S. history?
I think it's really important. CRT was written about in the 70s, but it was implemented with the U.S. Military complex, particularly the Navy. And they started it because you couldn't have a working army if people of two different races were fighting against each other because of the color of their skin. So they set up critical race theory and helped teach it to the soldiers so they would all work together. It's the same in schools. If we do not teach the kids how to work together as a solid people, we don't have a solid people. The other thing is, if we never look at the ugly parts of our history and we never acknowledge them and never do anything about it, we've lost the future. This country is not all one race. We are a melting pot. It's one thing that they've always said about the U.S. in U.S. history. If we don't learn about the different cultures and don't work together to become one people, regardless of our skin color, then we're already divided, a house divided. So it's very important we learn the history. It's very important we work on making changes so that we can have a better future.
Next question, Meg, is do you support an opt-in or an opt-out policy for kids checking out books from school libraries, and why do you have that position?
So there's already a great program in the LCSD1 library system, but also in the school system, is that you can opt out of anything that you find objectionable. And what's great about that is it actually puts the rights of parents at the forefront. Every parent can opt out of anything they don't feel their kids should read. And that's great because if you had an opt-in, you literally step on parental rights and say, I'm sorry, you don't get any choices unless you go through everything and decide what you can read. That's not what education's about. Education is about access to all knowledge that's there in front of you. Scary knowledge, fun knowledge, historical knowledge, it's all there for you. And so opting out means you make the distinct choice to say, I don't want my kids to learn that. And that's okay, that's what the parents' rights are. It's not the school board's job to tell you what you can and cannot read. It's our job to give you all the access to all the books. And so therefore the parents need to make that choice. Yes, will it take a lot of effort on the parents' part? Yeah, but that's what parenting is. We get involved with our kids, we find out how their education is going, and we care. And that's why the opt-out program is perfect, because it gives the parents their rights and all the responsibility.
Good. What should the process be for changing policies in the school district, and do you agree or disagree with the current process, and why?
I haven't had any needs to have anything changed. So the policy works for me now. When I get on the board, I will be able to look at those a little bit more carefully and decide with the group to see if things need to be updated, changed, modified to make it easier. Again, I've never had any problems with the board so far.
Very good. We've reached the end of our scripted questions, so I want to give you an opportunity to offer any other topics or issues that you want to address with the board. Anything you want to share with us?
Just that I really believe in education, I really believe in accessibility to education, and I really believe in equality. We are the equality state. And so I believe no matter what your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, your disabilities, your mobility issues, or your socioeconomic status, you deserve education. You deserve the access to it, and you shouldn't be restricted from it. Are there things in our past that are frightening and show that we didn't support equality? Yeah. The only way to address them is to acknowledge them and move forward in a different pattern. So I just really want to give everyone a chance to have their education and to learn everything they can.
Great. Anything else?
And that's it.
All right. Meg, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.